Answer me with your screams, Gotham. But don't really scream because this is on a podcast. I'm Anthony.
I'm Damon.
I'm David.
I'm Kirby.
I'm Dr. Kurtstadt.
I'm Katie.
And I'm Jim.
Welcome to issue number 154 of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast. Each and every week, we meet here to talk about comic books. On this week's show, we've got an action-packed lineup. In the club discussion, we're going to talk about issue 5 of Batman, The Adventures Continue, and then we'll jump over to Inkblot, issue number 2. Then in the weekly review segment, we're going to go all around the internet here and talk about the books that we've been reading, but in a that was the old format. Spoilers are welcome. I was just on autopilot there. We'll cover books both new and old. There we go. That's the script. And over in the letters page, this is going to be the question. If you didn't hear it, here it is, and then we'll cover it later in the show. What is one change that you would make to the comic book industry? So you can address that however you want. One change that you would make to the comic book industry. Okay, so we'll kick it off here first with Batman, The Adventures Continue. This is issue number 5. Batman is scrambling as he learns the true identity of the man who's been stalking him and the rest of the Bat family. As Batman and Alfred reel from the revelation, Tim demands answers. Batman's greatest shame is finally revealed. All right, we've been seeing this build up over the last couple months. The fact that Batman's doing what Batman does. He's had somebody lurking in the shadows. And Jason Todd, aka the Red Hood, is we get his origin story in this issue here. So while we pick up on some current adventure that's going on involving the Joker, where we last left off, but the majority of the issue is dealing with the fact of Jason Todd and actually how he came to be one of the Robins and how he came into the Bat family and how he would eventually leave and what happened with all of that drama. So all that stuff is kind of covered in a very Jason Todd specific issue here. That's going to be the majority of the talk. So what we're going to do here with the club discussion, kind of talk about some favorite moments, maybe some bad moments, some questions. Is there anybody that wants to jump in first for this? Anyone?
No takers?
I think it was a pretty good telling of the Jason Todd origin story. It wasn't the normal canon version, but it was, it pretty much hit the high points, and where it did change, the changes were reasonable. As far as, his brother being in a different gang and having to wear the Red Hood, that was completely new to me. The Red Hood thing was something that ostensibly the Joker had undergone. And because the Joker was originally the Red Hood, that's why Jason took it when he came back. But other than that, it was pretty good origin story.
Yeah, they had this street gang, the Wolves, as we hear it, and we see that played out. That and is it just to make sure I read this correctly? So is it Jason's older brother that we see that is forced to wear the Red Hood, and it's the whole getting caught.
That's what they did. Yes.
Yeah. Then Jason's the one kind of getting revenge, and we see Batman kind of stop him, and that's when he kind of recruits him. Now that he's just kind of a young orphan, as seems to be with the recruiting the Robins. But yeah, that was a fun animated series approach to adapting, an origin for Jason Todd. The one thing one thing that's always seems to be a problem in everything Batman, whether it be the comics or the cartoons, the live action movies, whatever you have, is that one thing that bugs me is that Batman is always his dinners are always getting cold. Alfred comes and he just brings them these these hot dinners, and he's always telling him, your dinner's getting cold, Master Bruce. And
Well,
Bruce
sometimes
just,
they're supposed to be cold.
yeah, like if it's that soup. But yeah,
Gazpacho?
yeah, the soup is the only time I think that it was meant to be cold. But yeah, we see this once again, and it just irritates me that Alfred goes through all the work and Bruce just doesn't care, and he just just have a hot meal once. That's all I gotta say.
Speaking of Alfred, when I turned this page, I was kind of shocked to see this panel. Before I got to read it, I saw that and it's like, what is he doing? It looked like he knocked the head off of Alfred.
Yeah, they might be just taking a little from the playbook of the current Batman line, of just doing all these awful things to Alfred. So
Yeah.
yeah, that doesn't look too good there. Yeah, I thought it was really good. Just that the denial of Bruce, and kind of because we see a little battle with the Scarecrow where Jason Todd is starts to flip out and actually gets to a moment where he is pretty much almost going to kill the Scarecrow. He gets ready he punches him, and he starts to fall out of the window until Batman catches him with the grappling hook.
The Scarecrow.
Yeah. But then there's a moment where Batman just kind of passes it off and saying, oh, well, it's the toxin, and that's why. But then Alfred did the research, and Batman, did as well, and, admitted to it. But just that, that moment where he was just kind of wanted to cover it up because he just didn't, he's taken some blame there, I think, for how quick Jason Todd got into the role of Robin.
I haven't read anything around it, but does anybody know why they made in some ways, I found it a little jarring. The characterization of Jason is just so different than canon. I mean, in the canon stuff, Jason doesn't really lose it until after he's been tortured and almost killed by the Joker. It's not like he comes into the role as this almost psychotic sort of Robin that we have, and then that gets brought out even more by his encounter with the Joker. To me, it made him a less sympathetic sort of character to follow along. Yeah, he had a reason to be in some ways because of his past, but one of the keys to Robin was that Robin always overcame that. Each of the Robins in their own way overcame their past anger, the past traumas they had to become better, where Jason just seems to be taken down this other route. And I'm not sure why they went with that as the origin story in this particular series.
Yeah, ultimately, I wonder if it's just their way of just kind of putting their own stamp on it, because definitely, kind of like what Jim was saying with the different origin with the Red Hood and everything too, that it just, maybe they just wanted to put their own spin. But you definitely brought up good points on, being, you don't sympathize with him as much, for as quick as he kind of loses it.
Well, even in the original comics, Jason was a little more of a challenge for Bruce than Dick had been. So it wasn't quite to this level, but no. Yeah.
You couldn't see the one in the original throwing Scarecrow out a window.
No. Yeah. And he always did have a more violent streak, especially now that he came back. But yeah, he was more of the fighter rather than the athlete or the acrobat that Dick was, and
Right.
less the detective that Tim was. And
Tim was.
There was one moment in here that actually made me go, oh, when I turn the page and I get to this giant kick here from Jason Todd knocking Batman out when he's kind of fleeing from the Batcave. But I cut to that and I audibly was like, oh, it was just such a, it's just a very enthusiastic, crazy high kick. And it just, it really leapt off the page there. Ty Templeton, the artist. We have Monica Kubina and colors, Josh Reed is the letterer, and Alan Burnett and Paul Dini as the writers. Throw that in there. But yeah, any other things? originally, because I think we were trying to discuss on, I think it was meant to be a 6-issue series, but there's issues now that are solicited afterwards. Because now you'll even
Seven
see on the
and eight.
Diamond, on the Previews World site, it'll say issue 7 of 6, issue 8 of 6. So like they did like update that the solicitations on their website at least. So going forward, I guess. With all you, I was intending to go for the mini series, and with all the different books I read, and there's a couple of those are Batman related. I am jumping off, I think, at the 6-issue mark. So when it comes to talking about future issues, if more people are still getting it, feel free. We can continue to talk about it. But I'm curious, with the remaining issues that are left, either in your own personal run or what what the run's actually going. Where do you think this is kind of going? And because this was part 1 of a new story, the Red Sun Rising part 1. So what do you have any outlook for Jason Todd as we see him in the end here, as he basically lures Batman and kind of had a trap and set off a bomb, an explosion, and it leaves with the dialogue of he means to taunt us, wear us down, then when we least expect it, go for the kill, unless I kill him first. So any expectation on what's going to happen with this at all?
Well, it'd be unfair for me to say, because actually in the digital comic, you can get all the way through what they call chapter 14, which would be issue 7. So actually, I have read ahead.
So yeah, it would be good to avoid your opinion on that at this moment. With the ones that you've read ahead, do we know if this is ending anytime soon, or is it just kind of turned into an ongoing maybe?
I get the impression that it's going to go beyond 7. 7 could be an end in itself in some ways, but it also leaves it open to go beyond 7. So,
okay.
The newest previews for Midtown also shows an issue 8.
Okay. That makes sense then, because it really does end in such a way that you could easily see it going beyond that.
Yeah, they must have just had some success with it, and they're like, all right, let's turn it in. I was talking about that with Kirby recently, about he's just started reading Giant Days, and that was intended for 6 issues, and it ended up going like 58 issues and one-shot specials and a novel spin-off and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, the success.
Well, that's just poor story management.
Yeah, if you look online at the issues, I mean, you can find stuff that says like issue number 11 and whatever, but then it'll have like a release date of August 27th, whatever. So I think that's just the way that they did the digital version of it, where it's not the regular issue numbers like what we've got.
Yeah, they give you 99-cent chapters. Is that what it is?
Yep.
Anyone else want to chime in that hasn't said anything? I forget if everyone said.
I have a feeling that you're going to see social services start coming in pretty soon, because I mean these boy wonders are getting so young that pretty soon he's just going to start stealing them from the cradle, and it's just.
What's that toddler doing driving that motorcycle?
And that could be their crossover with Marvel with Cradle from the Champions book that I talked about last week. There we go.
Cradle.
Yeah, I'm curious about the Red Hood character more.
One last thing I had was the subtitle for this story was Red Sun Rising. And I immediately thought, are they going to Superman?
That's what I
Because
thought too.
there was a Red Sun story that was done for that where he was born in the USSR.
Yeah.
Or landed in the USSR.
Katie, any thoughts on this issue?
Loved it. It makes Batman feel very accessible without making me feel excluded from the canon. Like, actually reading this, knowing it's separate, makes me interested to go and learn about the Red Hood and Jason Todd. I enjoy it. I keep loving this series. It is so worth my money. It's really well written. Like, sometimes a flashback or an origin story is just straight up boring. This one made me feel engaged in it and actually care about the characters and get a feeling and a sense for their growth. I do agree with Dr. Kurt's dad that Jason Todd feels kind of like a bad guy, and maybe he's going to end up being one. But it is good to get that reveal, because we, the reader, understand that it's Jason Todd, but Batman doesn't. So it's good to see that reveal and get them to come together and set up the next arc of the story. I liked it. Continues to be fun, worth my money. Good things to say about it. So.
All right. Any final remarks? Or otherwise, we will move on. Okay. Good. So our next club discussion here is going to be the one that we ushered into the club discussion because we found out we had several people that had picked it up and read it and really enjoyed it. We're talking about Inkblot issue number 2. After vanishing from the Seeker's Library in the Living Castle, the magical cat wanders deeper into the forest lands and finds a clan of elves. Something lurks in the haunted cave nearby, and the elves must go to investigate with the help of their new kitty companion. All right, Inkblot. We had learned about this family ruling a bunch of these kingdoms, and then there was a younger sibling, a younger daughter in that group who was kind of left to the library stacks, and we find out that she was kind of tasked with writing the history and keeping the lore alive of the family. And we see her just kind of, drifting into sleep, nodding off, and knocks over this inkwell off of her desk. And that inkwell, all of a sudden there was a cat that appeared, the Inkblot, if you will, and there was a portal jumping. They jumped into a land of giants in which she almost got eaten. And eventually they escaped and returned, but the cat was nowhere to be seen. So this issue number 2, we kind of switch gears a little bit as we jump into a little backstory of these other characters. We have a little girl and her mother going through kind of like the marketplace, and we see a bunch of elves and goblins and little mini shrunken characters down by the rocks there. There's a lot of craziness going on, and while they're just shopping, they're talking about the fact that these the sorcerers are people that you shouldn't be trusting within their land here. And suddenly a portal pops up, and these guys come in and basically claim the mother, saying that she has to serve the king on behalf of her people. And what we end up finding out, waking up from a nightmare, is that the little girl is now a mother herself, and the grandma basically is someone that they still hold out hope that she is going to be out there somewhere. Issue covers a quest to go after a dragon, which we see on the front cover here. And of course, our Inkblot main character of the cat, plays a very important part in this kind of new little sidelined journey. So anyone want to jump in on this one here? Give some thoughts on Inkblot issue number 2?
For starters, in the way you explained that, it was a whole different story to me.
Okay.
It's like,
I got it right though, right?
you start out at this fair thing going on and stuff, and it's like all I see is a ton of mischievous stuff going on here. You got this guy buying vials from this character here. He's got some plan to take something out. You got the 2 little characters walking away with their tiny little vial. You got these ogres that all look kind of ticked off and stuff. It's like they're not too good at salesmen, as cranky as they look. It's like some of these facial features on these characters at the stands and stuff. There's different things going on. And then you mentioned a portal opening. I didn't get a portal. I don't know where that came from. I just noticed that the wizards appeared after they put the spell around the lady, but I didn't see. I see the smoke thing behind them, but I didn't take that as a portal. But yeah, I guess that might have been.
Yeah, I mean they popped up somewhere. So
Oh,
because
yeah.
there's like a legion of hooded people behind them as well. So I assume that's just some kind of opened up some kind of vortex, whatever fantasy lingo you want to use. So
I thought the cat was more of the portal opener. But yeah,
the cat riding a some kind of eagle type creature, toucan eagle.
Turkey vulture.
Nah.
Got the vulture head, the big hawk wings.
Yeah, I'm gonna save the toucan eagle for my own series. So.
Did you guys have different books? Everyone different?
Wait, I read mine upside down. Did you read yours right side up?
Right to left.
Did
yeah,
you
anyone-
catch that with the skipping the generations thing right away? Because I had to go back because the names are so close that I didn't catch that.
It wasn't
Me a
until
while to get it too. Yes.
it wasn't until they said something about the grandma that I doubled back and was just like, oh, okay.
And that's a pretty messed up ability. Having all your ancestors' memories stuck in your head. We all have those messed up ancestors that we
Yeah.
have.
Uncle George, why?
Well, I just love the comedic element of this book. I mean, it's much more subtle than you find in some, and it's just fun to read. You know, the daughter has to knock her mom out of the way. Mom, we're wearing wood armor. What are you doing? Fighting the dragon. We gotta get out of here. And then the cat totally helps them win the battle, but it's only because it's chasing a mouse all over the place that it actually does anything to help them. And then then somebody sees it all and goes, we have been living like mice. It's time to live like the cat.
Okay.
The way of the cat. The way of the cat.
Way of the cat. The way of the cat. The girl's gone, duh, these people are crazy.
Now, you said he was chasing the mouse.
Yeah, there was a mouse that like popped out of the nostril of the
Well,
dragon.
but I took it that the mouse was living in the dragon's nostril, and the cat noticed it, went up and got the mouse out of the nostril, and that's why the dragon left, because he finally got the annoying thing on him, like the lion with the thorn in his paw, that type of thing. That's how I took it. I didn't know he chased the mouse into the dragon.
No, he chases it around the dragon. So as he's chasing it, he partially shreds the dragon's wings as he's running all over the dragon, trying to catch the mouse the whole time. It's like it's all just really a comedy of errors rather than the cat heroically saving the people sort of thing.
And what I really am impressed with this book, and they go into detail in the back, and they talked about it in the first one as well, is the creators, Emma Kubert and Rusty Glad, are basically doing the classic Marvel method, but almost even to a greater extent, rather than, an artist passing it to the writer, and then that person passing it to a different person to pass to a different person to get it the letters and the inks and all that. They're just passing it back and forth to each other. So it's almost like, if they're sharing a workspace and they do it, they pass it over, that person, does they pass it over, and they keep going again. And the fact that Rusty Glad talks about it in this issue, that it all starts with an idea. He writes a sentence on a Post-it note, and then she goes through and does all the pencils and all that. And then he does the inks, I think, and then she does the colors. Yeah, I've been following her process online and stuff too. She's been sharing some like work in progress, whether it's commissions or what have you. And she's an artist that I'm very interested in checking out in the future, and just her style and just this whole method between her and Rusty here is, I'm just impressed all the way through.
Well, that's what I love about this book, is it's like we were saying last time, that just don't care that much for fantasy anymore, but this actually dragged me in. But the thing I love about how they work the cat eyes and stuff, you get all the reading from the cat, and it's like you can tell what he's thinking, what he's doing, and stuff like that. It makes the storyline. And then the one gal with having the little green eye herself there, and when the cat's by her. I don't know what reference that has to do with anything, but
yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. I love how beautiful this book looks. It's nice because sometimes fantasy, especially modern fantasy, gets into being very gritty and dark and very like brown and beige colors. This is a colorful book. It makes you believe in the whimsy of fantasy and fairy tales. And that cat is just so cute. Like I just want to pick it up and grab it. something that I am interested in to see where this goes is I, based off of the first book, thought that the young lady in the library would be the main character. Reading this book, it feels like it has nothing at all to do with that. So I'm wondering if the cat is the main character, and as the cat leaps through its magic portals or whatever, we're going to get more stories. And I kind of like that episodic nature because it tells one whole event in a book with a connecting thread. So it'll be cool to see what they do with that. Are they going to go in that direction, or will it be something larger? Also, I thought the way of the cat bit was really funny because I'm like, have you ever sat and watched a cat? I mean, they might not be the best or maybe the most solid examples of how you should live your life because they can be kind of fussy. Fantastic read. Like it feels super accessible too. It's not a huge world where you have to know a lot about to get into it like so much fantasy is right now. It's good. It's a lot of fun, and I think that everyone could enjoy it. So definitely not just for adults or kids.
That's
I
a
love
really
the
cool
young
looking
elf's
dragon
response
too.
to the way of the cat. That's
Yeah.
Durkle-dung, Mom.
Yes. Yeah, Jim, you're right. The dragon is really cool.
Yeah, and Rusty, to go off of what Katie said about, being led by the cat, he goes, "We invite you to join us. The path may not be direct. It is led by a cat. Know this and trust that despite the whims of a mischievous nonsense animal, we know where we're headed." So,
Cool.
that's fun. Yeah. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And sounds like we are all too. Oh, and each cover so far, and this one serves as a dragon head on an Anthony body. So that's good. You gotta subscribe to the YouTube page, Crimson Cowl Comics on YouTube if you want to see that. Cool. Any other thoughts, overall reviews or anything? All right, then we will move on. So we will see you next time with Inkblot issue number 3. For our club discussion, we'll have some other things coming up in the next few weeks. In 2 Saturdays from now, beginning of the new month, we will see X-Ray Robot issue number 3. We've may have some interest in that. We'll have Batman the Three Jokers book number 3 on the horizon as well as the other issues from these here books that we talked about today. All right, that'll do it for the club discussion, but hang on because we have more comic book talk. All right. Well done, everybody.
And now a message from our sponsors.
Anchor Podcast. You want to make a podcast? Try Anchor Podcasting. It's the easy way.
Vote Inkblot for president. The way of the cat.
The way. Hold on. The way of the cat.
Third parties never make it.
All right. Take a swig for the working man here, and then I'll be ready to jump in. It's a shout out to Art Baltazar, the famous cartoonist, Says Things live show. It's a show, but he also stole that from Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast. So. All right. We are saved. We are recording. Here we go. Welcome to the weekly review section. We're going to go all around the internet, talk about the books that we've been reading, both new and old. My first one here is a brand new hardcover graphic novel, which is Dracula, Mother Bleeper. Vienna, 1889. Dracula's brides nail him to the bottom of his coffin. Los Angeles, 1974. An aging starlet decides to raise the stakes. Crime scene photographer Quincy Harker has the proof. But will anyone believe him before he gets his very own chalk outline? And are Dracula's 3 brides here to help Quincy or use him as bait? This here is a brand new graphic novel distributed by Image Comics by Alex DeCampi and artist Erica Henderson. I saw that creative team, who I'm very fond of, both of them in their own right. And the title of the book, regardless of the creators, definitely is an attention grabber. So I was like, yep, I definitely have to check this out. This one I actually read twice this week. Upon the first read, I think there was a lot to absorb with the storytelling. It's a very quick read. the art, I think, really sets the pacing for this. There's not a lot of dialogue, but the movement and the art and the coloring is really what takes you on for a ride of this book. Erica Henderson, who is most famously known for the art on the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl run. She's done some other books. She's done a run on Jughead solo book, and she's done the Assassination, I think it's called. But this here, definitely a widely different take than you would see in the Squirrel Girl book. And that's what I was really impressed by. She said she did a lot of her own experimenting and learning, a lot of technical terms with an art style that I don't understand, but from an artist's point of view, she basically just tried a lot of different things to kind of really tell her story here. Dracula is being told in a different kind of form. Dracula is somebody who is not your good-looking, brooding, man with the cape and all of that fun stuff. In this comic, he is basically represented by these crazy dark eyes, as you see in the opening inside pages, as well as his sharp teeth. And that's kind of how we are seeing Dracula is more of this crazy essence that's kind of floating around. But it's interesting starting off in the story and seeing Dracula being nailed to his coffin, basically closing up as we saw in the premise there. But it's like 100 years later or so until we get Dracula, who is unveiled once again and jumping into our current story with this magazine photographer, I think it is. Is that right? Magazine or newspaper?
Kind of like an independent,
Yeah, he's there to take photos of the crime scenes and things like that, and he's kind of has an overall story of trying to the 1970s actress, this starlet who was basically seen to be part of this kind of Manson family-esque murder scene, but it turns out that she awakens. We see her eyes pop up when people leave the room, and from this crazy vampire attack. This is the page I was looking for here, the splash page. Towards the end, things could get really crazy. It's definitely, I really enjoyed it on the second way around, just really admiring the art on the second time through. This book I was very much impressed with, and I think I can get a lot more with future readings of just kind of seeing how the art really tells the pacing of this. A couple other people here I think have read it. Jim and Kirby, is that correct? You haven't? Jim?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, the art was incredible. I really got that. And that take, like you said, on Dracula, instead of being that charismatic, Svengali, he was just a source of power, and that's what led people towards him. Not anything nice about him. Yeah, that they could get something out of him, and he took advantage of that. And when these women had enough of it, they were able to reclaim the power and nail him to this coffin for a while. But when he got out, they still went hunting for him, and it's like they ended up and tried to end the situation, and they did. Yeah, so that was. Now, are these brides of Dracula the new monster?
Yeah, I was just really impressed. Like I said, that first time through, I was just like, that was a lot to process, but I read it today again, and I got a lot more out of it, and I was excited to revisit it even more. But
yeah, it's on my list, but I haven't ordered it yet. I was kind of waiting for some reviews because I didn't know if it was worth going to 15 right now or whatever, or waiting a little bit.
Yeah, I have some online friends who run the Comic Book Couples Counseling podcast, and they have a Patreon in which they started doing some other comic book reviews and little special videos and stuff. And I know Brad over there, I'm not sure if Lisa had read this, but Brad did a write-up on it as well. And he was just really into this as well. And everybody that's been in my realm that I've really come across have really just going nuts over it and been having a lot of fun. So it's good to hear that, you know, at least the people that I know that I go to for comic book reviews, everyone feels to be on that same page of just being kind of blown away from it. So, but yeah,
For the price, I was expecting a little bit of a longer book, but
Yeah.
it is a hardcover book, so
yeah, I think
you get what you pay for, I guess. There, but
yeah, I would agree on that there. And then like for me, I'm just taking that art back and just like that's where it really becomes the winner for me. But yeah, I could understand that being you know, it is a rather thin, quick read. You know, it's not going to take you too long, but I think you'll get a lot out of it with future readings as well. So, but yeah, I really dug it. So yeah, that was my first pick here was Dracula, Mother Bleeper.
that's how you say that word.
Yeah, I think so. There's some blood spots on my cover, so I just figured I would skip over whatever two letters would be in between those. You know, I don't know what it would say. I'm pretty innocent, so I don't know what that word is. So I think it's just Mother Bleeper. All right, we'll jump over to Damon for the next book.
Okay, this week I decided to take a chance on something new. I never heard too much about it. I picked up The Realm by Seth Peck and Jeremy Hahn. This can be described, the little synopsis on the back is 15 years ago, our world was overrun by creatures of myth. Orcs, dragons, and other nameless horrors threw the entire planet into total chaos. Today, the shattered remnants of civilization must fight just to survive in a deadly new era of violence and mayhem. While a powerful sorcerer marshals his forces, a group of warriors embark on a journey to reclaim our world from the growing darkness. This story is actually 15 issues long, and it's divided into 3 trades. And this first trade, it kind of sets everything up. Obviously, I would kind of describe this as like a Lord of the Rings meets Mad Max. There's a Mad Max type of character in here who's he doesn't talk, but you see him battle like the orcs and the goblins, and he's a rather regular tough guy. You know, he jumps in, he's outnumbered, he always comes on top. Of course, you know, when I try to find a picture of them, I can't. But, and then there's this group. They're trying to get to, I think, Kansas City. And there's something special that they're supposed to do. We don't really know what it is yet. And they hired another man and his partner to lead them there. Because this is kind of like in the Walking Dead type of world. You know, the cities are destroyed. There's not many people left. Who are left are scavenging for food, fighting to stay alive. There's dragons. There's this weird wizard who's trying to get his powers from the dark side. There's goblins. Here's like some pictures of the orcs or goblins, whatever you want to call them. Here's one getting his head blown off.
Oh,
The art is pretty cool. It is for mature audiences, just mainly for the violence. You know, there's no nudity or anything like that. It's mainly just, you know, action, adventure, creature, violence, stuff like that. Like this one guy, I'm not going to say who it is. He likes to cut the horns off the dead goblins or orcs that he kills, and he wears them as a trophy. One of his partners that's leading the group wears this helmet, and it's a woman, but we don't know too much about her yet. And they try to gather, there's little tidbits and Easter eggs from other movies that they say, lines that they say that are similar to other movies and stuff, and images where you swear you've seen this before, and it looks like, you know, a different show or movie or comic book. And it's fast paced. I actually read this whole book while I was waiting for my car to get an oil change. I just zipped right through it. It read really fast. It's pretty much nonstop. You learn a little bit. There's all kinds of creatures. Like there's another type of like tentacled type monster. And I don't know, after reading The Last God, I wanted to kind of dip into more fantasy type of stuff. And this seemed kind of like right up my alley, kind of bridged the fantasy genre with my horror genre that I like so much. So this might be my entry into it. It's pretty good. I did pick up the other volumes. I'm hoping they're as good as this one. I know Katie's read this. This might have been something that either Dr. Kurt's dad or Jim might have read as well. I'm not too familiar with how long ago this might have came out. But did either of you read this as well?
I did not. I might now.
No, I do not.
Oh.
Is there an omnibus though?
No, just 3 trades.
Okay.
But you know, it is made by Image, and Image loves their deluxe hardcovers. You know, I'm looking at my bookcase and I see several of them. So I don't know why, especially since they're talking about keeping the story going or starting it back up again. I don't know why they don't put all 15 into like one deluxe hardcover. But for right now, you can pick up the trades. They're relatively cheap. I think like the first one was $7 on Target's website, and they just had their buy 2 get 1 free sale. So it's a cheap way to pick them up and read it and see how you like it. Katie, did you want to say anything? I know you read this. We were talking about it earlier.
Sure. So I like the way you describe it as very similar to The Walking Dead. I think if people go in with that premise, they will enjoy it a lot more. I was expecting more fantasy, so I was sort of like, this is not what I was expecting. But when you think of it as fantasy powers caused the apocalypse, and now what are we going to do about it? That's easier. And I like that they took that interpretation with it. I think it's pretty American. It's a rather modern look at it, and it's going to attract a lot of readers who, I mean, obviously The Walking Dead is a critical and commercial success. It is very good. So this is a safe bet to go with it. The character designs are really cool. Like the lady who wears the helmet all the time is awesome and very memorable. She shows up on a few covers. Like you said, it is similar to The Last God in ways. Yeah, I thought it was solidly okay. Like you, I sat and read through that first trade right away, and then I ended up getting the second one, and then I trickled off because they were taking a long time to put issues out for that third arc, and just decided it was not where I wanted to dedicate my time and money. Still a solid read. If you like fantasy, go for it. If you like, definitely post-apocalyptic stories, or even if you like urban fantasy and paranormal sci-fi, give it a shot. Yeah, that's what I have to say about it. Definitely worth trying. And the first trade, as you point out, is really good. So
I think I'll just end it there. That's the realm. If you're interested, it's accessible and cheap. Pick it up.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about a Superman title, and we might as well just go with somebody who's wearing a Superman shirt. David, what do you got for us?
Oh, me. Oh, maybe somebody else was talking about Superman. All right. I revisited The Man of Steel, which I believe was 1985. This was John Byrne and mostly John Byrne and Dick Giordano. This was after the Crisis on Infinite Earths, when John Byrne got the task of basically recreating Superman for DC Comics, just pulling from various versions and creating a new origin story, which came out in a miniseries called The Man of Steel. And so this I like to revisit every once in a while, just because this is really the version of Superman that I more or less grew up on. Everything, all the Superman stuff that I've known in comics came from this version of Superman. And there's a lot of things that are still used to this day, things that were developed. But John Byrne writes himself that the new Superman, as he puts it, not so new anymore, has many fathers and mothers. He was born out of a 50-year gestation period, and he goes on to credit all the people who have written Superman and had a hand in creating who Superman was up until that point. And then, John Burns just sort of picked what he thought were the things that made Superman Superman, and tried to just take it all and put it into one kind of more cohesive story and origin, figuring out what to get rid of, what to bring in. One of the things that I always liked about this version of Superman is that he kept the Kents alive, and most other versions had killed off the Kents, and they become very important side characters in the development of this version of Superman. And so that was something that I liked in this version versus a lot of the other versions, as you had supporting characters that were pretty much ignored in other versions of it. They really do use a lot more of the supporting characters starting from here than they did in his development and everything else. So you get his origin, his first meeting with Lois Lane, his first encounter with Batman is covered in here as well as Lex Luthor, his early encounters with Lex Luthor, where in this version, Lex Luthor was actually quite different. This is the Lex Luthor that more of us think of now as Lex Luthor. But up until this point, Lex Luthor was always kind of a mad scientist kind of character. He was always coming up with these crazy inventions and schemes and things like this. And in this version, they start off, he's still got a little bit of hair left. He's this billionaire industrialist. And so they made Lex Luthor into a villain that was a little bit more relatable to the times when a lot of times corporate America, could be seen as the bad guy. Those 1%ers were the enemy. And so that's what they did with Lex Luthor. Rather than going the mad scientist route, he became this evil industrialist that could get by with everything. He pay people off. He owned, half the city, and he could just seem to do whatever he wanted. And Superman became the first threat to him. So this miniseries, The Man of Steel, laid the groundwork for all the Superman stories that came throughout the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s. All the way really up until what we have today. So if you have an interest in Superman and want to know where all that comes from, I'd suggest grabbing a copy of The Man of Steel and giving it a look.
Excellent. All right, let's jump over to Kirby for the next one.
GrizzlyShark. Like, you would think GrizzlyShark would be like maybe a bottom half grizzly, top half shark, but no, there's a shark just in his full form in the woods, living his days, enjoying his life, and some people come out hunting for him. This guy, I want to give a basic concept. You got a father in the woods with his son. Son wants to go off and pee. Father throws a shotgun and smacks him in the back of the head with it, cuts his head open a little bit, yells at him, tells him, you don't go wandering off into the woods without a shotgun, just in case a shark jumps out at you or something, because we have sharks all over the wilderness here. His son goes out, wandering close to the trees, and all of a sudden a shark flies out and just bites half his body off him. And the dad basically shoots at the son, shoots at the shark, hits the son and stuff. Son crawls out. He's like, I'm dying, Daddy. It's like, don't worry, I'll cauterize the wound. Picks up the son by his hands and sets him right on top of the bonfire to cauterize the wound. So this is just constant hilarious. The first line right off the bat just had me giggling and laughing, just having a blast with this comic. Just the things that happen with all the hillbillies and the hunting the shark and what the shark does to them and stuff. But yeah, it's tons of hilarity ensues in this one. Basically, the concept was brought up by two writer artists. It was originally planned that it was going to be sea bear and grizzly shark. And you got a polar bear that's in the sea, and you got a shark that's in the woods. So they basically swapped lives. Now, which one is that? You got to turn your volume on there, Anthony. But yeah, they basically made a deal where they're going to make their own separate comics. They're going to do the grizzly shark separate, sea bear separate, and then they were going to link up down the road. I don't know where it went. Now, which one is that one?
So you're talking about GrizzlyShark, which is issue 1. Then issue 2 is called GrizzlyShark Returns. So they like kind of retitle it there. And then the third issue
link.
The third issue is the GrizzlyShark versus Sea Bear. So
okay, but they never did any other sea bear ones before that. He didn't get those out.
Not that I'm aware of. I just had these 3. So
yeah, they talk about it in here where they planned on each doing the separate comics and then linking them together up in the end. And it just, I noticed that they had those other 2 grizzly shark ones, but I haven't seen any other sea bears out there. So, but yeah, this is definitely fun. I'm glad I got it on a 99-cent sale because I would have been disappointed paying the $3.50 for it originally because it was such a quick read. I read this thing in probably 10 minutes, if that. But it's just tons of hilarity. Watching these people get chomped up by a shark that just keeps popping out of the bushes and stuff. Everybody just cuts himself, and I can't give it all away. It's just too quick of a comic to read, but it's definitely worth the money. I go out and get it and try it out.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to send a message out to these people and see if they can do a crossover not only with GrizzlyShark and Sea Bear, but as well as the shirtless bear fighter. That would be an awesome crossover to get all 3 of those in one comic. And then
that shirtless bear fighter can team up with Craven and they can go hunt these monsters.
Yeah, and team up with pantsless shark fighter.
What do you mean? There's a version with pants. Look, he's got bear pants on.
Craven's a lonely guy. They'd be a good team up.
Good. All right, let's jump on over to Dr. Kurt's dad for the next one.
I even turned off my background so I could show you the cover. That's one of the great things about this. Blade, the complete collection. It covers Blade 1 through 12 from 2019 and Wolverine versus Blade special. What an iconic cover that is. The description on the back probably says it as well as anything. Explore Blade's mysterious past and sink your teeth into his presence in stories featuring Spider-Man, Dracula, Dr. Doom, and Santa Claus. As Civil War rocks the Marvel universe, Blade's blades clash with Wolverine's claws. But why does Logan seem so familiar? Then, because you demanded it, Hannibal King returns and fangs are sure to fly in a mismatched buddy cop style team up. Blade heads to England seeking answers, but when all he finds is trouble, someone's gonna pay. Quest starring Union Jack, plus not a hoax, not an imaginary story, the death of Blade. And when Logan returns for a rematch years in the making, there will be blood. I love this. Really what they're doing in this particular series from 2019 is they're weaving together 3 different ideas in Blade that impact Blade's life at the same time. One, he suddenly is introduced to his father, and he begins to struggle with his own past. How did he get here? Why did his father not? Why wasn't his father a part of his life? We find some really startling things about both Blade and his father in the series. He's also impacted by the fact that the Civil War cycle is just ending. Tony Stark is the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. now, and he gets recruited by S.H.I.E.L.D. to go and track down those who are not paying attention to the Registration Act. And one of those is Wolverine. And it turns into a kind of a classic, fascinating battle with Blade pulling a trick right at the end that is pretty amazing, but we end up not even really knowing who would win the battle between Blade and Wolverine. And then the third part of it is Blade is offered the chance during this series to give up being a vampire. He can, he's given a formula that would allow him to lose his hunger for blood, to be reverted back basically to a normal person. And he has to struggle with, is he willing to do that? And the final use of that formula is a fascinating part of how this story all weaves together. So I found it a really great series with a character that I feel is really iconic and hasn't got within comics the kind of the upfront sort of stuff that he should have. He's usually a character in the background in the Marvel universe rather than a character with his own comic. But I have always found Blade a fascinating character. I think this particular series in 2019 rose out of his popularity in the movies. So they were capitalizing on that. But it's really a good read. And if you're interested at all in the character of Blade, this is a good place to get both his origin and some very interesting background on who Blade really is. As part of my Halloween reading right now, I'm trying to read as my comics are all more Halloween themed. So I finished up Blade for this one. Next week, I will have Werewolf by Night, Volume 3 that I'm reading through right now. So another kind of classic Halloween comic moment.
Excellent. All right, let's jump over to Katie.
All right, so this week I have Dune, House Atreides, #1. The writer is Brian Herbert. So I had put a lot of expectations in this book. It actually started from a conversation we had about 6 months ago when we said, like, if you were adapting a book from literature into comics, what would it be? And I said Dune, and I was pleasantly surprised they were going to do that. So obviously the movie that this was put out to hype up has been pushed back for a long time. What else? So I learned that this is an adaptation of a hardcover book. There is in the Dune universe a book called House Atreides. It's been out for quite a while, I guess. This first issue does a lot of setting things up. So we learn that there is an emperor who has lived for a long time and is expected to live for quite a bit longer. And some of the people close to him are not happy about that. They are very bad guys and they want to come up with a way to get rid of the emperor. We also see a machine planet called Ix. And on Ix, they, I guess they make all kinds of robots, all sorts of machines. And that's going to become a thing later on. The Harkonnens, the bad guys of the Dune trilogy, or at least the first Dune book, and forgive me, I don't know a lot about Dune, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The Harkonnens are on Arrakis. They have control of Arrakis, and they are mining and looking for spice. And while they're there, there is an explosion of spice. And then finally, we see characters that I think are a little bit more familiar to the public. Duke Leto Atreides is actually not Duke yet. So he is 15 years old, and he is going to now be sent out into the galaxy to finish his education. And kind of to celebrate that and a little bit to pat his own ego, Leto's father hosts and participates in a space bullfight, which I did not expect, but was actually an interesting touch. And then... yeah, that's the major points of this book. This is all still very new to me, so I appreciate your patience as I talk about this. You can clearly tell this is going to be a long-running series. It's a huge universe. So they're just trying to set up who, what, when, where, why, and how right now. I really enjoyed this book. I really wanted myself to like it, and I did. The art was fantastic. The writing is really good. I really appreciate that they have Brian Herbert working on it. So we're getting the writer to adapt his own script. And I liked it. I am actually looking forward to the second book. And there's a Dune graphic novel coming out around Thanksgiving that I'm excited to read as well. Now, let's talk about my expectations for this book. So I tried reading Dune for the first time at 11, and it was too weird for me. I was not quite mature enough to read it, and I could never get that out of my mind to, be able to really appreciate it. I knew that I should appreciate and understand Dune because it's hugely important to modern American literature and the science fiction and space fantasy that comes after it. And I am excited by them adapting it because I really think this is a rich, incredibly detailed, creative world that having some artwork to guide you and give you an interpretation of what this looks like is hugely helpful. I'm a technical writer, and we talk a whole lot about how do we use visual aids and different mediums to get our message across when words alone won't do. So I apply that to comic books where does the art help the story, or are they kind of forcing the two together? I think the art and the visual expression of the story is really helpful, and I already feel like it's helping me, and it just looks really good. So that's cool. Obviously, people who listen to this podcast know I'm really into Star Wars comics, and this gives me a more grown-up take of what I would like from Star Wars, and I kind of like that, actually. And incidentally enough, George Lucas was influenced by Dune, which you can read more about that if you want. Anyway, Dune, House Atreides, #1. Really loved it. Looking forward to the next one. Hope it's just as good. Excited to really learn about this universe, both as a reader and someone who is a student of writing. So yeah, all good things. Thank you for listening.
All right. Jim.
All right. Katie, I'm looking forward to reading it too. My copy is arriving tomorrow or Monday.
All right. Oh, cool. I hope that's a good point, actually. I did read mine digitally, so I don't know how that's keeping up. Hopefully it wasn't too spoilery for you. So
I took my earpiece out, so I didn't listen.
cool. Hope you like it.
Today I have We Live. This is a post-apocalyptic fantasy. And start out, the cover. It's a fold-out cover with this incredible detailed scene on it. It shows this world, just scenes from this world. This book is by the Miranda brothers, which means nothing to me, but it's guys named Inaki and Roy Miranda, who both do the writing and the art. Colors by Ava de la Cruz and letters by David Sharp. And this is from Aftershock Comics. Like I said, it's a post-apocalyptic fantasy. The world has basically been destroyed. It's on its last legs. And aliens come and say, guess what? We'll help you out. We'll save 5,000 of your children and take them to another place. There are these bracelets. If one of your kids finds them, put it on, come to our place, and we'll take them away for you. And that's where we start out, where there's kids going around on their way to join the aliens on their last few days of Earth before they get taken away. And we see a brother and a sister who are in the wastelands, and they have to get on the bus, and the bus breaks down, and they meet other kids. And, at the end, they go through some adventures, and then, really bright, colorful artwork, really fantastic creatures are imagined here. They meet some kind of Bengal tiger in the woods who looks like this.
Simba.
and lightning storms and everything. One of the coolest things about this book was right here. It has its own brand new soundtrack. You scan that QR code and it takes you to the YouTube channel for this book's soundtrack. And you get that first code will take you to the opening song. There is another one on the last page of the story that gives you a second story or second song. These are original songs for this comic book. And that is pretty cool. Oh, speaking of and this page is just absolutely gorgeous. And then we have Thanos in the next issue.
And that one
some back material
that takes you to this podcast.
There's a cartoon that is in the world cartoon that is a civil defense announcement that's telling people how to deal with these bracelets. So this is a cartoon that exists in the world. And then there is a map of what's going on as well, showing the route that people are taking, what kind of dangers they face, different creatures and everything. So yeah, it was very exciting. I'm looking forward to reading this. Quite a different take. The two main characters are Tala and Kokobo or Hototo, little boy Hototo. And to keep him brave, his sister makes him a superhero costume, telling him when he gets to his new home, he's going to be a superhero there. So he runs around with that outfit on, and she explains the significance of it to him. So that was a nice moment. So, but yeah, I think this is going to be a good story going on. So I don't remember if this was a limited or an ongoing series, but
isn't that the alien version of They Live?
It could be.
Since Roddy Piper died before they got the second movie out, they put it on comics.
Some of the more creatures in there. That will be my reviews for this week because I need to get going.
Okay.
See you all later.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim. Good to see you.
Get X-Ray Robot number 3 on Wednesday. Okay, well, we're going to jump over to this here, and I'm not sure if, Jim's gone, so he's not going to hear this awesome pun that I had set up, but my next review is going to be a very short review. If you're watching the YouTube video, you're looking at a comic book that is roughly 3 inches tall. This is a wallet comic. This here is done by Jay Stevens and Mike Allred. This is called The Stiff. This is an 8-page wallet-sized comic, and it is very small, so I actually had to get my glasses out here to read some of the fine print. A former heavyweight fighter remembered for a strange habit of frequently blacking out during a bout, only to leap back to life, in quotes, seconds later. Now, in the private investigation racket, he protects his glass jaw with a fantastic mask, just like in the comics. This here is a short story original comic that is dealing with this former heavyweight champion wearing this mask, as you can see on the cover here. And it's a very short story about a lady coming to basically to this bar. That's where he's kind of holding his meetings here. And this lady is talking about her, I think, an ex-husband that is he's in question. Let's see here. He is the one-time stage, I should have kept the glasses on, one-time stage magician and the current owner of a successful chain of line dancing bars. Okay. So this lady comes and basically wants this superhero or this investigator, former guy known as the Stiff, to investigate her husband and see what's going on. He does a little stakeout mission and he sees that the husband is possibly having an affair as he looks through the window, and there is a lady that he is talking to over there, and he is basically gets in a fight with another private investigator who is working on the other side, and there's a couple page bout in which they're trying to get the facts straight and wondering who's working for who and who's in the wrong and who's in the right. It is a short story comic, so I'm not going to give any more than that. The cool thing is, if people are wondering where they can get this wallet-sized comic, I forget what issue exactly, but if you collect Mike Allred's The Atomics, starting in the year 2000, in the back of those comics, he did a lot of cool cutout things where you can cut out little character dioramas and put get your tape out and make
Don't
little
tell Kurt about that.
What's that?
Don't tell Kurt about that.
Yeah. And if Kurt does find out about this, you can ease his mind a little bit that I did buy a second copy once I saw that existed. So I went back to the internet, bought doubles of like 4 or 5 issues so I could rip out that back page and everything. But then this one was cool. It's a couple pages long, and you had to tear them out, cut them out. You had to fold them all in the right order to get the 8 pages, and then take the staple to it and assemble. And there is an ad, much like the Madman comics, kind of showing some different artists' take on the characters. They've got a little Madman advertisement on the back of that too. So this is a wallet-sized collectible comic, 8 pages long, The Stiff. I forget which issue in particular, but I think they went up to like 16 or 17 issues of the Atomics. So just get them all and you could get this comic. Don't know. I doubt it's going to be in the trade paperback, so you might have to go into the single issue back issues, Kirby. So yeah, that is The Stiff from Jay Stevens and Mike Allred. All right. Next up here, get to my list. We're jumping over to David. Is he not ready? I wasn't looking.
Yes,
What?
David, it's you.
Yeah, I was just, for some reason, I was expecting somebody else. All right. Well, in talking about revisiting books, I went to the other old trades that I had and revisited another classic. And this, like, if you've ever heard me talk about Watchmen, which is like this classic graphic novel that is the recommended reading. Everybody's supposed to read this thing. Everybody's supposed to love this thing. And I just never really cared that much for it. Although I appreciate it for what it is and what it's done to the comic book industry. I would say the same thing about this next one. This is a very well-known one, more so as a graphic novel than as the original miniseries that it was put out as. This is Frank Miller's one of his best-known works, Batman: The Dark Knight Returns. It's probably one of the first trades that I ever bought, and you can tell it's been read several times. It's one of those books where I've read it, I've reread it, I've read it some more, and never really found it to be quite as great as a lot of people think of it. However, I have a great appreciation for what it's done for comics in general, and specifically for Batman. A lot of what's come from Batman, a lot of the things that we've gotten since this has really come from Frank Miller's work and what he put out. This gave us a much darker version of Batman than what we had at that point. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I've enjoyed having Batman as a little bit darker of a character. Batman in some ways should be. It's best, I think, when they find a nice balance between the darkness and then some of the other aspects of doing it. And that's one of the reasons that I like the Batman the Animated Series. I think that it's a great blending of those aspects. But when I first read this, I was amazed at how different the art was in this book from anything that was really out at that time, and just the different ways that they did all the panels in it, and the tones. They're very subdued, not very colorful at all. And you do see a change though, and I'd really have to find the example here from when Batman first returns. He's a little bit more colorful. He's got the blue and gray costume and the yellow and all that. And as it goes further into it, he takes a darker turn. The blue turns to black, and so you're noticing these things as he's making this return and the transformation that he goes through. But it's definitely a darker take on Batman than what they had been doing. This, of course, also comes. This is, I believe, 86. So it's also, shortly following Crisis on Infinite Earths. So this was another opportunity to revamp a character that had been around for many, many years. And even though this wasn't the canon version of Batman, this definitely influenced all the all the canon works that followed. The darker tones of Batman, the darker tones of the Joker, takes on Robin, things like that. In fact, one of my favorite things of this book was actually the Robin that it gave us in the Carrie Kelly version. I thought was sort of this nice, refreshing new twist to the Robin character. But it definitely has played a huge part in comics in general, and again, Batman specifically, in all the things that we've gotten from Batman since then. And of course, maybe the reason I don't like it is because they don't paint Superman in the best light. But that aside, it definitely has its place in comics. And then even if, like me, you're not a huge fan of it, it is hard not to give respect to this book for what it accomplished at that time and the way that it transformed the comic book industry after this, both good and bad. Because you could also argue that this led to the darker and darker comics that came and filled the 90s and things like that. And yes, this has some responsibility there too. But a lot of good stories and things have also come from this. So respect.
And that's why I always recommend that after reading a Batman comic is to pick up an Archie Digest, Damon. The next one, we're going to jump over to Kirby.
All right, coming back from the hospital the other day, I swung by Collector's Edge Comics on 7826 West Burleigh Street, Milwaukee, and
Is this a paid advertisement?
yep. And I stopped in to see Tommy and I check out their shop, and they had really nice layout, graphic novels all over the place, laid out nicely on the upper wall. You got all your tons of the newer issue comics laid out all the way around, and I loved how they had sets made up, all kinds of different sets of comics you could get.
Oh, they had Kurt's trades.
Whereas usually you go into a shop and they just got random miscellaneous boxes, dollar comics and stuff like that, discount comics you can check out. But the one I read this week was WolfCop 1 and 2. And while I was reading this, I watched the first WolfCop movie.
Classic.
Yes, it still holds up to this day. I could watch it again tonight, no problem.
The theme song is great.
The thing
Could you watch it every day? Could you watch it every night for like the next 3 weeks?
Where would
Oh,
you
yeah.
where would you rank WolfCop on a scale of Remo Williams to a good movie?
Just
Remo
under-
Williams wasn't that bad.
We were talking about a pre-show, so that's an inside joke for some of us. I just had to throw it in there. Go ahead, WolfCop.
All right. So if you haven't seen the movie, or if you have, ever since hard-drinking local Woodhaven police officer Lou Garou had a late-night bender and stumbled onto dark magic, his life has been turned upside down. Now he moonlights as WolfCop, a rage-fueled, bourbon-swilling, magnum-toting, rabid warrior for justice. WolfCop #1, he's everyone's favorite alcoholic, lycanthropic lawman tearing out of the big screen and onto these gorgeous pages to fight bigger, badder, and meaner monsters than anything that has threatened Woodhaven before. I love how this series doesn't work together at all. I like how everything's different. I can't remember WolfCop 2, the movie, the whole layout of that, but I thought the sidekick character is also in that one. That's in the first one. And I'm not sure if he has some type of ability or if he's brought back through witchcraft or what, how that works out. If anyone here remembers if he was in there or not, this guy right here, but he appears in these comics and it's like he dies brutally in these different things. So I don't know how he comes back or what's going on with that. But this one has a great storyline of these Frankenstein type bikers that are going around collecting people to feed, because the one lead character feeds on human remains and they keep bringing them bodies. And if you show up and don't bring a body, well, then you end up becoming the food for the day. But it's very interesting. Basically like the big bad wolf and the pigs type scenes that they use in all the different forms with each one of the characters or each one of the storylines. And the second one kind of goes into like a brothel type thing where the sidekick and WolfCop are together again, and they come across these gals and they get all drunk and go to hang out with them, and they find out that they live in a brothel, and the brothel, there's WolfCop gets himself in a little bit of trouble in there. You find out the girls are not what they seem. Of course, they're not going to find a good layout of them, but they got a guy, their little protector of the brothel. He's a big guy character walking around with the samurai sword and stuff, so they kind of like wondering what's going on. But yeah, there's a little bit of magic ensues and people turn into some different characters in here, and I don't want to ruin the storyline for you, but these two comics were just as fun as the first movie. I know I love the second movie. It's just been so long I can't remember what the whole storyline of that was, but yeah, there's more of these than just these two, because when I bought them in the set, I was thinking, okay, Tommy set me up with the complete set, and I get done with it and find out it shows about the next issue in the back of it, but each one is a complete story, which is nice. So it's not just going on and you're just hanging off the edge and waiting for more, but I still want more because these were very fun, and it worked out great with watching the movie, just laughing, just having a good time. If you like B movies, it's worth getting.
What if I like Jerry Seinfeld's B movie? Is it worth getting?
No, if you like Jerry Seinfeld, you won't like this at all.
Oh,
Because you have no humor in your heart.
All right, we are going to jump over to the next one, which I do have to ask if this was a typo, but Katie is the It's listed here as Battle Adventures Continue. Was that Batman Adventures Continue?
Yes, it was, and that sounds like a really great book, but I've not read it, so I have no other reviews. But
That's
you're right. it's a typo.
Maybe you just held on to that one until Batman Adventures Continue because it was just a great pairing of words. So just wanted to check before I skipped over it.
I appreciate it, but now I want to read that book.
All right, so yeah, pre-order your next issue of Battle Adventures Continue. Use the offer code Skittles.
Yeah, I love the original Battle Adventures, so I'm very excited about Battle Adventures.
Yeah, we see. Now we see it continue in the next book, so that's a great. Okay, if I didn't miss anybody, this should be the last review for the weekly reviews. This is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Best of series. This is the first one, Best of Raphael. This is an oversized comic for $5.99. There are 3 oversized issues that is collecting from the past. Collecting Raphael micro series from the Mirage line, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. We have the Raphael micro series from IDW from Brian Lynch and Franco Aruro. And we have the Raphael macro series, I assume also from IDW. This is from Kevin Eastman and Tom Waltz, and there's just a whole bunch of names. Ben Bishop. So yeah, I saw this in the previews a couple months ago, and they are doing one for each of the turtles, and they're all designed in this very cool, like glossy type cover. I really like the production value and the design layout, and I think all 4 of these turtle best of books are going to look really cool next to each other. Might be worth framing these up, get them bagged and board and framed, because they're going to look pretty cool in like a square format. This is collecting some of the original stuff. These are all one-shot tales, so it's not one of those things where it leaves you on a cliffhanger and then says, hey, go buy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, volume 3 hardcover ultimate edition. It doesn't like lead you to have to get all those. It pretty much gives you a good taste of it. The majority of the Raphael stories here are dealing with his relationship, both good and bad, with Casey Jones. You see him meeting Casey Jones, which you see is adapted fairly close in the original live action movie. Some of that stuff is represented in these original comics, all in color, by the way. The only one I did read originally prior to this was the middle story that was written by Brian Lynch. He's a screenwriter and comic book writer that I've liked for quite some time, so it was cool to see his story reprinted in here. But yeah, just gives you a good taste and really shows you a vast example of what they tell in Turtles comics and how they've evolved, but really kept that same kind of tone over the years. You see the Alopex character thrown in here later on. I see a lot of Casey Jones. The third story is something I'm going to have to read again, deals with Raphael kind of being tortured and tested upon in a lab, and it's kind of dealing with some old memories, and the story kind of jumps around a little bit. It really is going to serve from a second read to really get that one, but it is really good taste for those that have never checked out Ninja Turtle comics. I think this is definitely a good example for the upcoming issues as well, to kind of give you a good taste of what these characters are like in the original comic books throughout the several decades that they've existed. But just on a sheer production value and design, it's a real sleek cover, and seems like a lot of my covers just line up with my body if I hold it up this week. That might just be an unplanned theme for the comic club this week. But if you're into Ninja Turtles, if you haven't read anything, much of it rather, this might be a good jump on point to get a little taste. That is the best of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, Raphael. I think 2 other ones are in the pre-orders, and in the current one, I think the Leonardo book just is up for pre-order. So check them out.
They didn't come out. They didn't put the Michelangelo one yet.
This will be the first one out of the 4 so far. So,
because I know you said Donatello was on the pre-orders, but
yeah, and I think it might have been like maybe it's every 2 months. So I'm wondering if we just had Donatello is the one that just wrapped up in the pre-orders. So maybe Mikey's to come in early 2021 or not. But This is
Yeah.
the first one so far, so if you want to get on them, this is the time. All right, so that will do it for the weekly reviews. We have one more segment we're going to return with, and that is the letters page. All right, excellent.
Do we really get letters, or are you just making up?
We're mostly making them up. I do. The majority of the questions come from a friend of mine that I just have her send me like a batch of them, and then I will use some of those. And then sometimes I just put in a random question generator, a little behind the scenes for the YouTube audience, because the audio podcast does not get this goodness. I'll put in a random question generator and I'll get that question, but then I will further adapt it to comic books. So,
So we're not really reading like, Dear Comic Club.
That's what I was wondering. Do we have fans who actually send us letters?
Why isn't Jacob ever there?
as far as the audio listeners go, they think we get all of these letters. But
Let's go to the mailbag.
Before you hit record, I forgot to look. What is the question this week?
I will say it, and yeah, I'll just tell you now because mine is a relatively short one. I will read it here. It says, "What is one change that you'd make to the comic book industry?" And you can answer that however you want, whether that means only Batman books or less Batman books, whatever you want to do. It's just basically what change would you make, and that could be on a. I'll explain it in the video.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep. We are recording. Here we go. Welcome back to the show. This is our letters page in which we have millions of fans write us handwritten letters, most done with inkwells that tip over and create cats that can open up portals. But all of these fans spend all their time writing us letters. It's like Christmas over here. I have mail bags. I have had to rent a storage shed to fit all of these letters. I've gotten so many paper cuts because there's just it's amazing. Every paper cut is worth it. So I picked out one letter from that giant stack this week, and it is
The
what
one
is
that wasn't hate mail.
what's that?
The one that wasn't hate mail.
That's right. Yep. This letter says, written by anonymous. They didn't want their name to be known. What is one change that you'd make to the comic book industry? I will kick it off. You can interpret this question in any way you want, as are all the letters page questions. So whether that be a personal choice of liking a character or hating a character, or just the way comics ship or companies or how many comics come out, whatever, however you approach that question. The one thing I would change to the comic book industry would be the putting the year up in the corner with the number. A lot of times you'd have to open up the inside of the book. Let's say when you're getting some Marvel Now and Marvel All New, Marvel Now reboots, you'll get, sometimes 2 number 1 issues within the same year, much like a Howard the Duck and Squirrel Girl did a couple years back. A lot of times you have to open up the catalog and then, or the book, and then you'll see, what year it was printed. Or sometimes if you're Kirby, you'll get issue 1 of a certain run and then issue 2 of another run, and then you gotta, go back. I only use him as an example because he talks about it on his podcast, Under the Cowl of MS. So that's a plug there. But I have that same issue too when I try to tell people where to get comics, and I'll have to be like, okay, no, you need this cover for that number. So if they had, Howard the Duck number 1, and then you saw 2015 underneath it, and then well, I guess now it runs into a problem because they had a second Howard the Duck number 1, so then they could put, fall 2015. But basically just kind of, even for ongoing runs too, of just kind of really being able to see what kind of real volume it is without opening up a book. Sometimes you're at a comic book convention back when those existed. You would have to open up bags and boards. Sometimes you won't be able to do that if things are taped up and frowned upon. So I think that would just be a nice little handy information up in the top corner box, however they could do it. So that is my answer. Damon, do you have one?
Yeah. First thing that popped into my mind was I wish they would offer like a print on demand type of service. The one thing, since I seem to be the newbie of the group, I'm the newest one in the comics. As I learn more and I read more, I want to go back to older stuff, and you can't find it. Omnibuses go out of print and then are fetching $300-400. Trade paperbacks go out of print. I know Katie and I have our frustrations with some of the Star Wars epic collections. And it's really kind of a turnoff to, I would think, to some people when they first get into the hobby. I wish they could have some kind of like print on demand where, like, if there's a trade or a book you wanted, you could put your name on a list. When they get to maybe 100 people or something, they print a batch for you. You know, I wouldn't care if it costed a little more or if it was if it took a couple months, whatever, but some way of doing that, because I can't get into reading digitally. I have like Marvel not unlimited, but you know, when you get the digital copies in the Marvel, I tried reading them on there. I tried the free epic collections that Prime does, and I just can't. I really like having the physical copy, you know. And there's a lot of older stuff that I'd like to get into, but it's like very expensive or hard to track down. So I wish they had some kind of like print on demand type of service for a lot of the older stuff. You know, and they could even make lists for like the newer stuff. You know, why print, you know, 100,000 copies of a book that might not even sell when, you know, if you had a, you know, like so many people that pre-ordered or stuff, you know, something like that. That's the one change I wish they would make.
That's definitely a good suggestion. And like what you said too, if there was some sort of like waiting list, you get up to a certain number. And if you need to reach that certain number, you could always just reach out to the millions of people that write us these very letters, handwritten right into the podcast, and I'm sure they would be interested to put their name on something else too. So,
absolutely.
David, what would you change about the comic book industry?
Ooh, where to start?
No diamond.
Well, that's actually a very big thing that I would change. Is I mean, I would have never have let Diamond get as big as they were to begin with, because it caused so many problems for the comic book industry, and it's nice now that there are some companies like DC's not going through them. The problem is that's not the right way to go about it. It's not that DC should, you know, you got to order DC somewhere else, and you got to order Alterna from over here, and you got to order Marvel from here. It's that you should have a few different distributors capable of fulfilling these orders. So if I chose to order through Diamond, great. Or if I wanted to order through, you know, Crimson Cowl comic distribution, you know, then I would have that option. And maybe there's going to be some things that you can't get through them, you know, that are exclusives or whatever. But I always felt like Diamond had too much power over the entire industry, and they proved that to be true when during the COVID pandemic they made the decision to shut down everything. And maybe that's something that needed to happen. But the fact that they were the ones that were able to call that, you know, it wasn't up to Marvel to say, hey, we're going to halt, you know, publication for the next couple of months, or DC to say, hey, we're going to pull this, we'll release some stuff digitally, but we're, you know, holding off on doing some of this stuff because we know that places are closing down. And they certainly didn't get input from the comic book shops as to what was going on. They just made the decision for the whole industry. And I don't think that any distributor should be so powerful that they get to make such a huge decision for the entire industry. Now, if you had other options out there and there were other distributors, and Diamond said, hey, you know what, right now we can't do this, we're going to have to hold off on distribution. And it leaves the other distributors to say, okay, well, you know what, we agree and we're going to stop it, or hey, we're going to try to go through. But really, it would put them all in a position where they would have to communicate with Marvel. They would have to communicate with DC. They'd have to communicate with Image and all these other smaller independent comic book companies to come up with the decision on, you know, how they're going to proceed with this. And that's really what should have happened, and not Diamond just deciding, hey, you know, we're halting everything. And Diamond got to make the decisions on how they were going to proceed with that, and at what point they would start distribution back up, and how they would distribute going forward. These are things that should have been more of a industry-wide decision-making process. And then it also would change things a little bit, I think, you know, and make the industry a little bit more competitive. You know, when you have different options as to who you can buy through, you know, it makes it more competitive, and it makes it better for everybody, I think, in the end, to be able to do that. But as it is, you know, Diamond decides everything. You know, Diamond decides what's available. They decide, you know, who's worthy of being distributed. If you had other distributors out there, there might be some smaller comic book company that you know, Diamond doesn't want to touch, but there's another distributor out there that can say, hey, you know what, we do think that there's a place in the market for that comic. And then Diamond might have to decide, well, hey, you know, they're picking it up, maybe we need to pick this up too. Or but Diamond right now just gets to decide, hey, you know, that we don't think that comic's going to sell, so there's no way to put it out there on the market other than for that company to you know, put it out themselves and distribute it themselves, which a lot of small places aren't going to be able to do that in a way that they can make it. So really, I think that would be the big change, is to limit the power of Diamond.
Great answer. All right, Kirby.
Yeah, a lot along those same lines that David was talking about. I believe there should be a whole restructuring of the whole comic industry, to the point that you should eliminate the top guy, the top distributor, and have all that stuff, and go back to the days where you could order everything and anything that you needed for the shops and get it, and then you could have the return process that was set up correctly. I mean, back in the day, granted, it was sweet because you get your books, your magazines, your comics, everything from one distributor, and then at the end of the month, whatever you had left, you rip the cover off, send the covers back to the company, and you got your credit, and you got to keep the rest of the book. And that's why to this day still you see these people selling tons of comics without the covers on them. So that's where they originated from. Back then you didn't have no hassles. You could get a hold of everything. The complications you got with it nowadays is these people got to come out with 25 different covers and all this other crap. It's like you got to restructure a story 50 different times and stuff, and that overpopulates what's out there, and it makes it harder to just have a distributor give a company access to everything, because you got to have these $150 comics and all this signed stuff and all this specialty stuff. So that causes conflict with it and stuff. But I think going back to the way where you could get everything from the actual companies and not have these off-branch companies deciding how they're going to structure each different company's products and stuff to the stores, would actually give the stores more of a chance to still stay open in these COVID times and stuff, instead of people like Tommy trying to make it in Collector's Edge until his New Year's Eve sale, hoping that he's still in business and stuff. You can sit there and have all the different product accessible, walk in, still do your pull list and stuff like that, your pre-orders and everything, but have more accessibility instead of just make it. I mean, this day and age, yeah, I know online's a plus and everything, but it's nice to walk in the store and see people face to face and still have that out there for us. And we're just losing it. It's just becoming a go buy on eBay type lifestyle, and that's just not the thing I want to see. I want to see the old style stores come back, where sit on a couch, shoot the shit with everybody, and have fun.
And ever since, I've refused to sit on any couch since the Crimson couch. So, all right, good answer there. Let's jump over to Dr. Kurtstad. What would you change about the comic book industry?
I think what is probably most important to me is that the comic book industry would once again open itself to new creativity and have more of a heart to it. To explain it a little bit, what happens, it seems, especially in Marvel and DC, is that they get hung up on, we have these kind of iconic characters and we have to hang on to them. And so they never age. They never, there's no movement in their life to a certain extent, because somehow the industry builds itself to have these have to continue. But as a comic reader, I suppose I would like to see heroes age out, struggle with the issues of aging, and coming to the creation of new characters that are exciting, rather than just trying to repristinate the same characters forever and ever. There are characters I love, and certainly I would love to see Spider-Man be forever, but also I've missed the fact that there's not much, he never gets older, he never never faces any of those complex issues that go with characters moving on. And I would love to see, and also to think about when Stan Lee was just, earlier in his career, was saying, sometimes I have to create things that maybe the crowds don't love. I have to take a risk. I have to try something new. Comics seem far more aversive to that kind of thinking pattern now. We have to kind of hold on to what we know sells a lot, and then we don't allow enough room for new possibilities to appear within the comic world. And that's less true in some of the, like, Alterna and some of the others that are constantly trying to bring in new talent and new kind of visions of things. But the big companies seem to have lost that ability to really innovate, to open up some new things. And this is also a pet peeve that goes, that a little bit ties into it. If anybody does a universal spanning story more than once every 5 years, they should be strung up. I'm tired of having one every 2 months, and then expecting everybody to buy every comic in Marvel so you can get all the comics in the storyline they're doing. That, I think that's really unfair to comic buyers to expect that to happen that often. Now, those big storylines should be special. They should be something that's, we see as something outside the norm, rather than now we're going to do it all the time because, well, it's about the money.
You're good. All
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I have to agree with that. I mean, how many times were we trying to decide what our club pick was going to be? And it wasn't that we're like, well, there's not really anything from Marvel this time. It's that which one of these crossovers are we doing that are happening simultaneously from Marvel? Because it's not just that there's one big one every year, which is too many. It's that sometimes they were happening at the same time, and then we'd have to decide, well, which one are we gonna follow as a club or whatever. And yeah, and each one of them would have all these various things going on with them, where they'd have the main story and then they'd have all the offshoots, and you didn't know. I mean, we knew because sometimes we'd have somebody reading all of them and that person would say, no, you don't need to get these. But otherwise, how do you know? And they count on that because they want you to buy all these extras, but it's just so much how can you really expect readers to buy not only their regular monthly books that they're trying to keep up on, but then to have all these extras that go along with it, and then the extras that go with the extras.
Well, and I think it also limits creativity again. Instead of having books be able to generate their own sort of environment, they're all tied into the central concept. So the writers aren't free just to do something new and different. You have to tie into this continuity all the time, and this fixed sort of center of things. And again, I don't think it breathes creativity into the industry.
All right, Katie.
Okay. So my idea is I would like to see these companies, specifically Marvel and DC, and I'll tell you why. Specifically Marvel and DC, pay their creative teams more. I think it is flat out wrong that the majority of creators do not make enough money to live off of comics, especially when Marvel and DC are owned by two of the biggest companies in the world who can actually, in fact, afford to pay people more. I'm not saying every single person has to make the same amount of money Robert Kirkman does, but I don't think that we should be letting people live in squalor. And I recognize that in comics, for people who are heavily motivated and have a lot of business sense, you can crowdfund and make a lot of money. But just in terms of keeping up with the times, people having to live in these really expensive cities, because a lot of people from Marvel still live in New York and that area, which is obviously quite pricey to live in. I think we need to pay people more. And I think that'll actually encourage creativity, because you're not going to want to take a risk with something where you're like, if I don't get this job, I will not have money to eat. But if you have a little more money and you can, have a decent standard of living, you're going to take bigger risks and be like, hey, I got this cool new idea. I don't have to rehash the Infinity Gauntlet again, right? And maybe it's a hit. Maybe that is what makes you into Robert Kirkman or any of the other, big figures in comics, because you had a great idea and had the ability to execute it. And I don't know, I feel very strongly about that, because we're looking at Disney and AT&T. Now, I know this has been a very bad year for each other, and everyone is suffering, right? But how come their executives are still making the kind of money that they are, but they're laying off tens of thousands of people? And it really stings, because a lot of these people did not have the opportunity to maybe pay off debt, build up savings so that you have a cushion for life's inevitable screw-ups. And I would just like to see more of that as both a professional and as a reader. I think that's what's best. And we write these superheroes that work on these epic causes and like to talk about humanitarian passions. Let's see that in real life. People talk about, like, it's just part of being an artist that you don't have enough money and that you have to starve and live in poverty. No, you don't. I'm a professional writer and I'm making double what some of these people are making, right? Because I write about computers and software. So it is possible to be done. And that's very important to me. So that's what I have to say about that.
Well said.
Thank you.
And I'm glad I didn't go last, because all I wanted was put a stupid year up in the corner of a comic book. Okay,
I
so
agree with the year. I would.
But that's a good point too.
Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, ultimately, we have to make it more accessible for readers, and with all the reboots and stuff we have, that's a fantastic way to do it. And promote yourself rather than going to a third-party app to find out when was this published and do I need it. It's right there. So ultimately, you're putting readers first, and sometimes simple is best.
So we all agree I had the best answer. Thank you, Katie, for that clarification. All right, so that is going to do it for this week of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club podcast. We've got many more podcasts to go every single Saturday. You can subscribe to us on all the podcast channels, and subscribe to us on YouTube for the Crimson Cowls comics on YouTube. Check out Kirby's podcast, which is
Under the Cowl of MS.
Excellent. And then we have the other podcast that David manages, which is
Under the Cowl, not of MS.
X-rated version.
So all of those things you can find out more about us in the upcoming weeks, especially this Wednesday. Special announcement. We haven't at all talked about this, but X-Ray Robot issue number 3 comes out, and I have been drawn into it. So it's going to be a collector's item. It's probably going to fly off the shelves, probably from me buying it off the shelves, but it's still going to sell.
Well, with the great story and artwork and everything, I think we've all been drawn into it.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, that is coming out, but in the coming weeks we'll talk about that as well as the other books we mentioned. And I think that will do it for this issue of the Crimson Cowl Comic Club. This entire time, I've wanted to eat a turkey leg and a jar of honey and some fresh fish from the floating kingdoms, and I've wanted to ride a pony.
I've been just aiming.
I've had Spawn looking over my shoulder.
I've been WolfShark Grizzly Cop.
He's been muted.
Go ahead, Kate.
And I'm just watching the squirrels.
To be continued.
Meow. Meow. Meow.